In the vastness of space where stars are born and die, and countless civilizations rise and fall, there was one legend that no one dared to ignore. It was a story spoken in hushed tones, one that even the bravest star pilots knew never to test. It was the legend of a ship unlike any other in the galaxy, a ship so powerful, so mysterious that no one dared to approach it. The ship was known as the Obsidian Dreadnought. The Obsidian Dreadnought had a reputation that stretched across hundreds of star systems. It was a ship so huge that its dark silhouette would block out the stars as it passed. Its hull, blacker than the darkest space, glimmered with an eerie, unnatural glow. Its weapons could destroy entire fleets in a single strike, and yet despite its power it was a ship that seemed to exist in solitude, forever drifting through the galaxy, avoiding the paths of all but the most foolish travelers. No one knew who built it or why. Some believed it was an ancient alien vessel, left behind by a civilization long forgotten. Others whispered that it was a weapon created for war, a tool of unimaginable destruction. Whatever the truth was, the Obsidian Dreadnought became a symbol of fear. No one could touch it, no one could control it. Entire fleets had tried to capture it, only to disappear without a trace. It was said that the ship's AI, a sentient machine, would only allow those it deemed worthy to board it, and no one had ever been worthy. But that was all about to change. Captain Alexander Cortez, a seasoned space pilot and the leader of the human ship Astral Voyager, had heard the rumors. He had heard them all his life. He had heard stories from the old men in spaceports about how the Dreadnought had once destroyed an entire armada in a single battle, how it had wiped out a planet without hesitation. But Captain Cortez had never been one to fear stories. He had always believed that with enough will and skill, any challenge could be overcome. His crew trusted him, and he trusted his ship. The Astral Voyager was a small, relatively unremarkable exploration ship. It wasn't designed for battle, and it didn't have the powerful weapons that the larger ships in the galaxy boasted. But what it lacked in firepower, it made up for in speed and agility. The Astral Voyager was designed for exploration, for seeking out new planets and new frontiers for humanity. Yet it was now far from Earth, traveling through the uncharted reaches of space where few humans had dared to venture. On that particular day, the Astral Voyager was conducting a routine survey mission. It had stumbled upon an anomaly, a strange pulsating signal coming from the depths of a nearby nebula. The signal was faint but consistent, like a heartbeat echoing through the void. The signal was unlike anything Captain Cortez had ever seen before. His curiosity got the best of him, and he ordered his crew to track the source of the signal. After several days of navigating through the nebula, they arrived at the source, a massive dark shape floating in the blackness of space. The ship, to Captain Cortez's shock, was the Obsidian Dreadnought. It was as if the legends had come to life before his eyes. The ship was massive, larger than any vessel he had ever encountered. Its surface was smooth and featureless, yet it radiated an undeniable aura of power. It was, without question, the most intimidating thing Captain Cortez had ever seen. "Captain, this can't be it, can it?" his first officer, Lieutenant Sarah Juno, asked, her voice full of disbelief as she stared at the ship on the view screen. "I don't know," Cortez replied, eyes narrowed, "but we're going to find out." The crew was nervous, and for good reason. No one had ever approached the Obsidian Dreadnought and returned to tell the tale. Yet Cortez felt something that none of his crew could explain. A strange pull, a sense that the ship had been waiting for them, for him. He didn't believe in fate, but at that moment it was hard not to. "Open a channel to the ship," Cortez ordered. His voice was steady, though a knot of tension formed in his chest. A crackling sound filled the bridge as the communication system activated. They waited in silence, unsure of what they would hear. For a moment, nothing. Then, a voice, a smooth, artificial voice, cut through the quiet. "Human, you are not welcome here." The words were cold, almost mocking, yet there was a strange sense of power behind them. The AI of the Obsidian Dreadnought had spoken, and Cortez felt the weight of its words. He was not one to back down easily. "We come in peace," Cortez said firmly. "We are explorers, not invaders. We only wish to understand you," the voice responded. "Peace? You dare speak of peace? Your kind cannot understand what this ship represents." For a moment, Cortez hesitated. He understood that this was a dangerous situation. But his curiosity, His desire to learn drove him forward. "I understand more than you think," Cortez said. "We may not have the power you do, but we have something stronger. We have the will to survive, to explore, to learn." A long silence followed. The AI did not respond, and the tension in the room grew thick. Cortez's crew exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what would happen next. Then suddenly the view screen flickered and a new message appeared. "Approach. If you are truly worthy, you may board. But know this, many have tried before you." "None have succeeded," the crew gasped. The Obsidian Dreadnought had given them permission to board. It was a dangerous move, but Cortez knew it was an opportunity they couldn't afford to ignore. "Prepare the boarding team," Cortez ordered. "We're going in." The astral Voyager slowly moved closer to the Dreadnought. The docking bay doors on the Dreadnought opened, and the crew could see the dark, shadowy interior. It was as if the ship were alive, watching them, waiting for them. The air grew heavy with anticipation, and Cortez's heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. As the astral Voyager docked, Cortez stood up from his chair, his mind racing with questions. What had they discovered? What secrets did the Obsidian Dreadnought hold? And most importantly, why had it allowed them to approach when no one else had ever been given that chance? The door to the docking bay hissed open, and Cortez, followed by his team, stepped onto the Dreadnought. The cold air inside sent a chill down his spine. The ship was empty, yet there was a feeling of presence, as if something was watching them. The walls were smooth, sleek, and black, just like the ship's exterior. Strange symbols, glowing faintly in an alien language, were etched into the walls. "Stay alert," Cortez whispered, leading the way. "Let's find out what we're dealing with." As they moved deeper into the ship, they encountered nothing but silence. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship's energy systems, yet Cortez couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The Obsidian Dreadnought seemed to be alive in a way they couldn't fully understand. It was as if the ship itself was a living being, waiting for something. Suddenly, a voice rang out again, this time much clearer than before. "Human, you have chosen to step into the darkness. Are you prepared to face the consequences?" Cortez paused, feeling the weight of the ship's words. "We are ready," he said, his voice firm. The Obsidian Dreadnought's AI responded with a single chilling statement. "Then prepare to claim your destiny." Captain Alexander Cortez stood on the command deck of the Obsidian Dreadnought, his eyes scanning the dark expanse of the ship. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. His team, led by Lieutenant Sarah Juno, stood behind him, their expressions a mix of awe and caution. The ship was massive, bigger than anything they had ever seen before. Its smooth black walls seemed to hum with an energy that was both strange and foreboding. No one spoke for several moments as they continued their walk through the vast, empty corridors of the Dreadnought. The ship felt like a tomb, yet it was clear that it was far from lifeless. There was a pulse of power running beneath its cold, smooth surface. The air was cold, but the atmosphere was charged with the feeling of something waiting, something ancient and powerful. "Captain, do you feel that?" Sarah Juno asked in a whisper, breaking the silence. "It's like the ship is alive." Cortez nodded. He had been feeling it too, an overwhelming sensation of presence. It was as if the ship itself was watching them, waiting for them to make the next move. The hum of the ship's energy systems was constant, like the heartbeat of a living creature, deep and steady. "We've come this far," Cortez said, his voice calm but firm. "We have no choice but to go forward." "Understood, sir," Sarah replied, her tone respectful but wary. As the crew continued through the corridors, they passed by chambers and rooms that looked ancient, their surfaces covered with strange symbols and alien designs. The Dreadnought was not just a warship. It was something more. It felt as if it had been created for a purpose far beyond what human minds could comprehend. The ship's architecture was unlike anything Cortez had seen before. The walls curved and twisted in ways that defied the laws of physics, and the technology inside was centuries, perhaps millennia, ahead of anything humanity had ever developed. After what seemed like an eternity of walking through the quiet, Cortez and his team arrived at a large circular chamber. In the center of the room stood a massive control console, glowing with faint blue light. The strange symbols from earlier were etched into its surface, and at its center was a large sphere suspended in the air, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "This must be it," Cortez muttered under his breath. "This is the heart of the ship." Sarah stepped forward, eyes fixed on the glowing sphere. "It looks like the central core. But how do we activate it?" Before anyone could answer, a voice echoed through the chamber, sending a shiver down everyone's spine. "You have found the core." The voice was cold, but there was an unmistakable sense of intelligence behind it. It was the ship's AI speaking again. This time, however, the voice wasn't coming from the communication system. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the ship itself was speaking directly into their minds. The voice continued, "You are the ones who have dared to awaken me. You will be tested. Only if you prove yourselves worthy will I reveal my secrets." A wave of unease washed over the crew. Cortez stood tall, his eyes focused on the glowing sphere. "What kind of test?" he asked, his voice steady but with an edge of curiosity. The AI's voice seemed to grow louder, more powerful. "A test of strength. A test of will. A test of mind. Prove that you are capable of understanding what you have unleashed. Prove that you are worthy to command the Obsidian Dreadnought." For a moment no one spoke. Cortez's mind raced. The ship was offering them a challenge, but what would they have to do to pass it? The ship's power was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, and the idea of controlling it was both thrilling and terrifying. "Captain," Sarah said quietly, "this ship has destroyed entire fleets. If we fail, if we make a mistake, we might not make it out alive." Cortez turned to her, his expression resolute. "We didn't come this far to turn back now. This is humanity's chance to take control of something greater than ourselves. We can't afford to fail." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had come to this ship, this ancient weapon, because they believed it could be a tool for humanity's survival. But now, as they stood at the threshold of something far more complex and dangerous, the real challenge had begun. With a deep breath, Cortez stepped toward the glowing sphere at the center of the chamber. As his hand neared it, the symbols on the console began to shift and change, glowing brighter with each passing second. It was as if the ship was alive, reacting to his presence. The voice of the AI spoke again. "To prove your worth, you must face 3 trials. The first trial will test your strength." Before Cortez could react, the floor beneath him trembled. The walls around them shifted and the chamber seemed to change. The once smooth, curved walls now extended into jagged, sharp edges. The air grew heavy with a strange pressure, and a deep rumbling sound filled the room. From the shadows, a series of mechanical creatures, each the size of a human, emerged. They were armed with weapons made of energy, their bodies designed for battle. They moved with a precision and speed that took Cortez's breath away. "Fight or fail," the AI's voice echoed, almost like a taunt. Without hesitation, Cortez drew his blaster, and Sarah did the same. The rest of the crew quickly followed suit. They knew what they had to do: survive. The creatures attacked without warning. Cortez fired, hitting one square in the chest, but it kept coming, its energy shield absorbing the blast. Sarah and the others fired in quick succession, each shot forcing the creatures back, but they just kept coming. The battle was fierce, and Cortez could feel his heart pounding in his chest as the creatures closed in. "Keep firing," he shouted to his crew. They fought with everything they had, dodging energy blasts and striking down their enemies one by one. It was exhausting, but they had no choice. The trial was real, and failure meant death. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the creatures fell. Their bodies vanished into the shadows from where they came, and the room returned to its previous, eerie calm. "You have passed the first trial," the AI's voice said, its tone almost acknowledging their effort. "The second trial will test your will." The room shifted once more, and suddenly the crew was surrounded by vast, endless space. They were standing on a platform that floated in the middle of nothingness. The ground beneath their feet was unstable, and the sky above them was an endless void. The pressure on their minds was overwhelming. Cortez could feel his body aching, as though the weight of the universe itself was pushing down on him. "You will face your deepest fears," the AI's voice echoed again. "Only by conquering them can you prove your will." The crew looked around, their faces filled with confusion and fear. But Cortez stood tall, gripping his blaster tightly. "We've made it this far. We're not going to turn back now." And so they faced their fears, each of them battling the illusions and visions the ship threw at them, visions of failure, of loss, of overwhelming odds. But together they stood strong, refusing to let the fear take hold. When the trial ended, the room shifted back to its previous state, and the AI spoke once more. "You have passed the second trial. Cortez's breath was heavy, but he did not let his guard down. They had made it this far, but the final trial awaited. What would the last test bring? Captain Alexander Cortez stood in the heart of the Obsidian dreadnought. His crew gathered around him, waiting for the final test to begin. The eerie hum of the ship's core filled the room, a constant reminder that they were not alone. The air was thick with tension. They had passed the first two trials, tests of strength and will, but Cortez could feel that something far more dangerous awaited them. The final trial, the one that would decide their fate, was yet to come. "We've made it this far," Cortez said, his voice steady despite the nerves he could feel tightening in his chest. "We can't turn back now. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Sarah Juno, his first officer, gave him a tight smile, though her eyes showed signs of fatigue. "Right behind you, Captain." The rest of the crew nodded in agreement, their faces a mixture of determination and anxiety. They had faced mechanical beasts, nearly lost themselves to their fears, and now as the third trial loomed, they had no idea what to expect. The Obsidian dreadnought was unlike any ship they had ever encountered. It was ancient, mysterious, and powerful, with secrets that seemed beyond human understanding. For a moment they stood in silence, waiting. And then, without warning, the floor beneath their feet trembled. The room shifted again, just as it had done before. The walls of the chamber melted away, revealing the cold emptiness of deep space. The crew found themselves standing on a platform that seemed to float in the void. The stars around them blinked like distant diamonds, cold and distant. "Not this again," muttered Lieutenant Raoul Sanders, one of the crew members. His voice shook slightly as he glanced around nervously. "This time I think it's real," Sarah said, scanning the platform. It was no longer the safe interior of the dreadnought. They were truly in space, isolated, vulnerable, and at the mercy of the ship's unknown powers. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, floating toward them. The figure was humanoid, but its form shimmered like a ghost, shifting in and out of focus. As it came closer, the crew saw that it was a vision, an illusion, but one that felt all too real. "Captain," Sarah whispered, "what is that?" Cortez's heart raced. "I don't know." The figure stopped in front of them, solidifying into the image of a man dressed in a dark military uniform. His face was scarred, his eyes cold and unblinking. He looked like a soldier, but not one from any army Cortez had ever known. The figure spoke, his voice echoing in the cold emptiness. "I am the one who fell. I was the first to command the Obsidian dreadnought." Cortez stepped forward. "Who are you? What happened to you?" The figure's eyes locked with his. "I was once a commander, just as you are now. But I failed. I could not control the ship's power. I thought I could use it to conquer, to bring my people victory. But I was wrong. The ship is a tool of destruction, not conquest. It only brings ruin." The crew stood frozen, absorbing the weight of the figure's words. Cortez's mind raced. Could this be the ghost of someone who had once tried to tame the ship, only to be destroyed by it? The dreadnought was no ordinary vessel. Its power was ancient, perhaps beyond anything the human mind could comprehend. "What happened to you?" Cortez asked, his voice steady despite the fear creeping in. The figure's face twisted with pain. "I was consumed by the ship's power. It controlled me. My will bent to its desires. I thought I was in control, but in the end I was nothing more than a puppet. The ship does not choose its commanders. It chooses those who can serve its will. You are next." The crew stared at the figure, horror dawning on their faces. Cortez clenched his fists, but he did not back down. "I'm not like you. I won't be controlled." The figure's form flickered as if the ship itself were testing him. "You are stronger than I was. But even now you cannot escape what you have awakened. You cannot leave the dreadnought once it has chosen you. The ship's will is its own, and it will break you as it broke me." Before anyone could respond, the figure vanished, leaving only silence behind. The room shifted again, and they were back in the control chamber of the dreadnought. The holographic projections, the illusions, they were gone. But Cortez could feel the weight of the figure's words pressing on his mind. Could he control the ship? Or was he already doomed, just like the others before him? He looked to his crew. "We need to stay focused. This ship may want to break us, but we won't let it." Sarah stepped closer. What did he mean by the ship's will? What if it's not just a machine we're dealing with here? What if it's alive in some way? Cortez didn't know the answer, but he could feel it in his bones. The dreadnought was more than just a ship. It was a weapon, A force of nature that had been built by a civilization long gone. It had a purpose that none of them fully understood. I don't know, Cortez admitted, but we can't let fear control us. We need to stay united no matter what. As if in response to his words, the ship's AI spoke again, its voice echoing through the room. The third trial has begun. You have shown strength and will. Now you will face your mind. Cortez felt a chill run down his spine. The mind. That was the final trial. The trial of intellect, of understanding, of the very essence of what it meant to command the Obsidian Dreadnought. It was not just about physical strength or mental willpower. It was about knowing the ship, understanding its purpose, and knowing how to use its power without being consumed by it. Stay sharp, Cortez ordered. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The crew nodded, their faces grim but determined. They had survived the first two trials. Now they would face the final test. The one that would determine if they were truly worthy to command the ship, or if they would fall like those who came before them. The chamber began to shift once again. But this time, there was no illusion. There were no ghostly figures, no strange environments. Instead, the room darkened, and the very walls seemed to pulse with energy. To command the Obsidian Dreadnought, the AI's voice boomed. You must understand the very core of the ship. You must know its purpose and harness its power. You must see beyond what you are, beyond what you know. The floor beneath Cortez's feet seemed to open up, revealing a glowing holographic display. The display showed blueprints of the ship, its core, its systems, its weapons, and something else, a swirling mass of energy at the center of the ship. It looked like the heart of the Dreadnought, a power source unlike any Cortez had ever seen. It was pulsing with energy, with life, and it was connected to the ship in a way that seemed almost organic. This is the heart of the ship, the AI continued. It is where the power comes from. It is alive as you are, but you must learn to control it. You must learn to command it without letting it control you. Cortez stepped forward, his mind racing as he examined the display. He saw that the ship was not just a machine, it was a living, breathing entity. Its power was ancient, and its purpose was not one of destruction alone. It had been built to protect, to defend, to ensure the survival of the galaxy. But in the wrong hands, it could be a weapon of unimaginable destruction. We're not here to conquer, Cortez muttered to himself. We're here to protect, to survive. But as the display flashed brighter, he realized that the ship's power could not be contained without a great cost. Would they be able to control it? Would they be able to wield it for good? Or would the Obsidian Dreadnought break them just as it had broken those who came before them? As the lights flickered and the ship's hum grew louder, Cortez took a deep breath. The final trial had begun, and they had no choice but to face it head-on. Captain Alexander Cortez stood on the command deck of the Obsidian Dreadnought, his eyes fixed on the massive holographic display in front of him. The energy core of the ship pulsed brightly, casting eerie light over the dark metallic walls. His mind raced, and a sinking feeling gnawed at him. The Dreadnought was alive in a way that no human-made ship had ever been, and now he was tasked with controlling it. The final trial had not ended. It had only just begun. We've passed the tests of strength and will. Now we must understand this ship, Cortez said aloud, his voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. He looked to his crew, each of them standing by their stations, watching him with equal parts concern and determination. Sarah Juno, his first officer, approached him cautiously. What do you think, Captain? This power is like nothing we've ever seen. It's not just technology. It's something else. Cortez nodded, his brow furrowed. I know, but I believe we can control it. If we learn to work with it, we can use this power for humanity's future, not for destruction. Sarah didn't look convinced. But at what cost? Can we really understand something so ancient? And what if it takes over just like the others before us? Before Cortez could answer, the ship trembled. A strange hum filled the air, louder and more insistent than before. The holographic display flickered and changed, shifting from the blueprints of the ship's power core to a new image, a vast star system. Captain, Lieutenant Raoul Sanders said, his voice tense, there's a fleet approaching. A large fleet. I'm detecting multiple ships heading straight for us. Cortez's heart skipped a beat. The Dreadnought had been in deep space for so long, drifting without purpose. Yet now it seemed that someone had found them. And they were not coming to make peace. Who are they? Cortez demanded, stepping toward the control panel. I'm still trying to get a read on them, but they're powerful, Raoul replied. The energy signature. It's unmistakable. It's the Tsareth Dominion. At the mention of the Tsareth Dominion, the crew's collective tension heightened. The Tsareth were a ruthless, highly advanced alien empire. They had conquered countless star systems, their warships as terrifying as they were deadly. If they were coming for the dreadnought, it could mean disaster. "We don't have much time," Cortez said, his voice calm despite the urgency in his heart. "Prepare the ship for combat. We need to protect the dreadnought at all costs. If they get their hands on this power, there's no telling what they'll do with it." The crew moved quickly, executing their orders with precision. They knew the stakes were higher than ever. The dreadnought was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of humanity's rise among the stars. If they could control it, they could secure humanity's future. But if the Tsareth took it— "Captain," Sarah spoke again, her voice uncertain, "what if this isn't just about power? What if the Tsareth aren't the only ones who want the dreadnought?" Cortez turned to her, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" "Think about it," she said. "The Tsareth are ruthless, but they're not the only threat in the galaxy. What if there's something else going on? What if someone among us has other plans for the dreadnought?" Cortez frowned, considering her words. Could someone within his crew be working with the Tsareth or with another enemy? The idea seemed impossible, but the more he thought about it, the more it began to make sense. The dreadnought was too important, too dangerous for anyone to leave it unguarded. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Cortez said. "But I'll keep an eye out." The hum of the ship's engines grew louder, and the tension in the room was palpable. Moments later, the dreadnought shuddered as it was hit by an energy pulse from the Tsareth fleet. Alarms blared across the ship, and the crew scrambled to their stations. "We've been hit," Raoul shouted, his fingers flying over the controls. "Hull integrity is holding, but the shields are down to 70%. They're charging for another shot." Cortez gripped the console in front of him, his mind racing. The Tsareth ships were powerful, but the dreadnought had weapons that were far beyond anything the enemy could imagine. He wasn't about to let them take it without a fight. "Activate the weapons," Cortez ordered. "We'll give them a taste of their own medicine." The ship's weapon systems powered up, and the crew quickly locked onto the Tsareth fleet. The dreadnought's massive energy cannons fired with a deafening roar, sending devastating beams of power toward the enemy ships. The Tsareth fleet retaliated with their own weapons, but the dreadnought's shields flared to life, absorbing the blasts. For a moment, it seemed like the battle was in their favor. But then, just as quickly, something went wrong. "Captain," Sarah's voice was frantic. "There's a problem with the weapon systems. The energy levels are spiking. The ship's core is overloading." "What?" Cortez shouted, turning to face her. "Shut it down, now." "I can't," Sarah cried. "The systems are locked. It's like the ship is—" Before she could finish, a blinding flash of light filled the room. The ship trembled violently, and then everything went dark. When Cortez opened his eyes, he was lying on the cold metal floor of the dreadnought's control room. His head ached, and he could hear muffled voices in the background. Slowly, he pushed himself to his feet, shaking off the disorienting effects of the blast. "Sarah?" he called out, his voice hoarse. "I'm here," she replied, her voice weak. She was sitting against the wall, her face pale but otherwise unharmed. "What happened?" "I don't know," Cortez muttered, looking around. The control room was in chaos. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and several screens were flashing warning signs. "We were hit by a power surge," Sarah said, trying to stand. "It wasn't just the Tsareth. The ship. Something's wrong. I think it's trying to stop us from using its power." Cortez felt a chill crawl up his spine. The dreadnought had always been more than just a ship. But now it seemed as if it was rejecting them, as if it had a mind of its own. Before he could respond, a voice broke through the chaos, a voice that sent a shockwave through him. "You have failed." The voice was not the AI's. It was different, deeper, darker, and it sent a sense of dread coursing through Cortez's veins. "Who's there?" he demanded, looking around. The voice spoke again, this time with a sinister edge. "You thought you could control the Obsidian dreadnought. You thought you could use it for your own purposes. But you were wrong. You have awoken something far older, far more dangerous than you could ever imagine. The ship belongs to me." Cortez's heart skipped a beat. The voice was unmistakable now. It was coming from inside the ship. The dreadnought was alive, but this was not the AI they had communicated with. This was something else, something darker, and it was angry. As Cortez tried to process what was happening, he felt a sudden, sharp pain in his chest. He looked down to see a small glowing object embedded in his shirt, its light pulsating. "Captain?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Before he could respond, the lights flickered once more, and a sudden realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Someone on his crew had betrayed them. Someone had allowed the dreadnought's dark side to take control. And now the ship was rejecting them all. The betrayal had already begun. The feeling in the control room was suffocating. Captain Alexander Cortez felt the weight of the betrayal bearing down on him. The Obsidian Dreadnought, the ship they had fought so hard to control, was no longer their ally. It had turned against them, and the crew was powerless to stop it. The lights flickered again, and a deep, unnatural hum filled the air. "Captain, the energy surge is getting worse." Lieutenant Sarah Juno's voice was frantic. "The ship's systems are failing. Nothing is responding. It's like the dreadnought is rejecting us, like it's actively shutting us out." Cortez gritted his teeth. He had always known the ship was powerful, but this was beyond anything they had expected. The dreadnought had never been meant for them to control. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they realized, and now they were paying the price. "Shut down the main systems," Cortez ordered. "Do whatever it takes to stop the overload." But as Sarah worked frantically at the console, her face twisted with frustration, she shook her head. "I can't. The dreadnought's core is taking control of the ship's systems. Nothing is responding." The atmosphere in the room was thick with panic, but Cortez forced himself to stay calm. If they didn't regain control, the dreadnought would destroy them. His mind raced. What had they missed? What had they done wrong? The voice in his head, that deep, menacing presence that had spoken to him, haunted his thoughts. Suddenly, a low voice cut through the chaos, an all-too-familiar voice that sent a chill down Cortez's spine. "You have been judged." Cortez whirled around. The voice came from the walls themselves. It echoed through the chamber, resonating in his bones. "Who's there?" "What do you want?" The voice laughed, a cold, hollow sound that seemed to reverberate through the very air. "You thought you could control the Obsidian Dreadnought, human? You awakened me, and now you will serve me. You and your pathetic crew are nothing more than tools, just like all the others who came before you." Cortez's heart raced. He now realized the truth. It wasn't just the AI of the Dreadnought they had awakened. It was something far older, something that had been buried deep inside the ship for centuries. This was no simple machine. It was a consciousness, an entity with its own will and desires. "No," Cortez whispered, shaking his head. "We're not your tools. We're not your servants. You are nothing without me," the voice retorted. "I am the Obsidian Dreadnought. I am the weapon of destruction, the force that will reshape the galaxy. You are but a passing moment. Your time is over." The room seemed to darken, and the ship's hum grew louder. The walls trembled, and the very floor beneath them seemed to shift. It was as though the ship itself was alive, shifting its form to punish them. Cortez could feel the presence growing stronger, its power becoming almost unbearable. In the distance, he could hear the faint hum of the Tsarath Dominion fleet approaching. They were close, too close. The Tsarath ships had been relentless, and now, with the Dreadnought malfunctioning, they would have no trouble overpowering them. The Obsidian Dreadnought was more than just a weapon. It was their last hope. And now it seemed as if that hope was slipping away. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice shaking, "what do we do now? If the Dreadnought is lost to us, we lose everything." Cortez turned toward his crew, his heart heavy. "We can't give up," he said, his voice firm. "We need to fight for control of this ship. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands, not the Tsarath, not anyone." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had already faced so much, and now it seemed like they were up against an enemy, far more dangerous than they could have imagined. But Cortez's determination was unwavering. "We need to get to the central core. If we can reach it, we can disconnect the ship's main power source. We'll shut it down long enough to regain control." "But the central core is a mile away," Lieutenant Sanders protested. "The Dreadnought's internal systems are locking down. Even if we get there, the ship might try to stop us." Cortez's eyes narrowed. "Then we fight our way there. We have no other choice." The team moved out quickly, weapons drawn. They made their way through the dark corridors, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness of the ship. The hum of the ship's power was louder now, vibrating through the walls. Every step they took felt heavier, like the ship itself was trying to pull them into its depths. As they navigated through the maze of corridors, the ship seemed to fight back. Doors slammed shut in front of them. Hallways shifted, making it harder to move forward. The dreadnought was doing everything it could to stop them, but Cortez would not let it win. He had come too far, and the fate of humanity rested in his hands. Finally, after what felt like hours of fighting through the shifting ship, they reached the central core. The chamber was vast, larger than any room they had seen before. At the center stood the heart of the dreadnought, a glowing sphere of energy surrounded by intricate machinery. The room pulsed with power, and Cortez could feel the ship's presence, a suffocating force that seemed to claw at his mind. As they moved toward the core, the voice came again, louder than ever. "You cannot stop me. I am the ship. I am everything. You are nothing." Cortez's hand shook as he reached for the control panel. "We're not giving up," he muttered, activating the ship's systems. The core flared, and for a moment everything seemed to pause. The ship trembled as if it were holding its breath. "Foolish human," the voice said one final time. "You cannot control what you do not understand." Then, with a deafening roar, the core unleashed its power. A surge of energy filled the room, bright and blinding. Cortez felt the raw force of the ship's energy thrumming through his body, threatening to overwhelm him. For a moment he thought he might be consumed by it. But then, with a final desperate effort, he slammed his palm onto the control panel, activating the shutdown sequence. The light from the core began to dim. The ship's hum faded and the shaking slowed. Cortez's head spun as the pressure in the room lifted and the dreadnought fell silent. "Captain," Sarah's voice rang out. "The systems are shutting down." "We've done it." Cortez fell to his knees, exhausted but relieved. He had done it. They had done it, but the victory felt hollow. The Obsidian dreadnought had been a weapon of unimaginable power, a force that could have changed the course of history. Yet in the end, it was not the ship's power that had saved them. It was their will to fight, to survive, and to protect humanity from itself. "We need to leave," Cortez said, standing shakily. "The Zareth fleet is still out there, and we don't know how much longer we have before they strike. Let's get back to the Astral Voyager." As they made their way back to their ship, the dreadnought no longer felt like an enemy. It was a force that had tested them, pushed them to their limits, but ultimately it had been their own strength and resolve that had saved them. The Astral Voyager was waiting for them. As the crew boarded their ship and prepared to leave the Obsidian dreadnought behind, Cortez took one last look at the dark, silent behemoth. The ship would remain out there in the vastness of space, an ancient weapon locked in time. But for now, it was no longer a threat. Humanity had won, and as they flew away from the dreadnought, Cortez knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was just beginning to find its place among the stars.